Here's Navarro on the run. Navarro's going to keep it. Navarro for 6. Touchdown, Bobcats.
I feel I had a hard time staying in my own lane.
Oh my goodness! Brett Murdoch, pick 6.
Harvath inside the 30, the 20. Blake Harvath will score.
And Mendoza takes a big hit. He never saw it coming. Trey White got in there.
There's his man, Rucker. And nobody's going to catch him. Goodbye.
Intercepted.
Tyree Skipper. Touchdown.
Telly again, why not? A step forward and make it 2 for Telly.
Quarterback keeper showing off the speed. Steps on the gas. Untouched.
The G5 Hive. All G5 all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live. We're excited to bring you the G5 college football coverage you love each and every week. I am Justice. Luke's not here yet. He'll be here shortly, my co-host. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching on X, please give us a follow, a like, and a retweet. If you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review. The G5 Hive merchandise store is now live. The link can be found in the YouTube comments, in the video comments, as well as pinned to our X page and at the bottom of the screen. Get yourself some sweet merch. We said last week, I believe Billy Tuesday recently got a sweatshirt. I hope you guys enjoy the merch. It's been a crazy week, crazy day. The last, 5 hours or so in the transfer portal, and some pretty shocking developments happened later this afternoon. And I'm sure it's not the only shock that we're in for in terms of transfer portal news. The portal officially opens, I believe, on Wednesday. I think it's a 10-day window, and I think today was just the beginning of the surprises. Lots of unexpected transfer portal entries this afternoon. More to come in the following days, I am sure. Kind of crazy. What's going on, Luke?
Hey, how's it going? What I miss? I know we just got started here. I've got a little girl who does not want to go to bed. It is way past her bedtime, but she had a nap and she is ready to go.
Well, let's get into our news and notes. What the Swarm needs to know, and we're going to start off with some transfer portal news. If anything happened in the last, hour or so, maybe we missed it, but hopefully we got most of it from today. Ohio linebacker Shea Taylor and defensive end Caden Schmitz both entered the transfer portal in the past week. That's a huge loss for Ohio. Shea Taylor was one of their stars on the defensive side of the ball. It's always to me, it's always a little bit puzzling when guys enter the portal in the spring. The only conclusion I can come to with a lot of these guys is that somebody called and offered a large sum of money. That's the only thing I can think of, because a lot of these guys were some of the stars on their current teams, and then the portal always needs defensive tackles and offensive tackles, and so that's just my assumption is someone's calling them and offering them something that they don't have at their current university. For the Ohio guys, it'll be interesting to see if they end up at Charlotte. I don't know any details on Charlotte's NIL or revenue sharing situation. Maybe it's better than Ohio, maybe it's not. But their head coach went to Charlotte, so I don't know. I believe I did see where Charlotte offered Shea Taylor among some other offers. So be interesting to see where those guys end up. Big losses for that Ohio defensive side of the ball. UAB defensive end Emmanuel Waller entered the transfer portal. He was one of the best edge rushers at UAB, so that's going to be a big loss. Western Michigan defensive tackle Mason Nelson has entered the transfer portal. Big guy in the middle. Effective guy in terms of tackles and getting pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. Memphis running back Rashad Amos, who recently transferred to Memphis from Ole Miss. He is no longer on the Memphis roster and likely headed to the transfer portal. And also Memphis offensive lineman Xavier Hill headed to the transfer portal. That's a huge loss for them. He was a two-time all-conference first team. He was on our all-G5 team and our all-American Athletic Conference first team as well. So that's a huge loss for Memphis. Nevada running back Savion Red is entering the portal. Savion came to Nevada a year ago from Texas. UTSA running back Brandon Hive is entering the transfer portal. My guess is maybe that had a little bit to do with Robert Henry getting another year of eligibility. And maybe he didn't want to sit behind him again. Brandon Hive was a redshirt freshman a season ago who had some good moments at UTSA. So I'm assuming he's looking for some more playing time. App State left tackle Markel Samuels entering the transfer portal, and that's the second starting offensive lineman from App State, or at least from a starting lineman from a year ago, within like the last couple weeks. So those are big losses for App State. Liberty got hit again today with another defensive guy, but Liberty defensive tackle Chris Bodie and defensive end TJ Bush Jr. are entering the transfer portal. Huge losses. Those are both all conference first team caliber players. Both were on our all conference USA G5 Hive team. It's going to be hard for Liberty to replace both of those guys up front. Bowling Green linebacker Safa Sapai Jr. is entering the transfer portal. He had just recently arrived this spring from Ferris State, where he was a two-time Division II national champion. South Florida wide receiver Naeem Simmons has entered the transfer portal. That one, I'm just guessing things that maybe didn't work out the way he hoped. Obviously, there was targets to be had with Sean Atkins graduating from South Florida. So we'll see where Naeem ends up. And now we'll get to like the big bomb droppers for today. South Alabama quarterback Gio Lopez. South Alabama just finished spring practice on Saturday. Heard some rumblings from some South Alabama accounts that it was going to be bad late this afternoon. And then it broke that Gio Lopez is entering the transfer portal. The rumor is Gio Lopez is headed to North Carolina to be the quarterback there for Bill Belichick. And according to South Alabama folks, the fans and the reporters, it's not done. That there's going to be some more hits to come for South Alabama. And then the one that came shortly after the Gio Lopez news, big blow for the Troy Trojans. Damian Taylor, running back in the transfer portal. He was expected to be the man for the Trojans this year. He shared that backfield with Gerald Green a year ago. He really came on in the second half of the season. Gerald Green had moved on. So you would expect Damian Taylor to kind of get the full workload there, and now he's in the portal. So, yeah, huge blow for the Troy Trojans. Kent State. Last week we talked about it. Kenny Burns was placed on administrative leave. Well, he's been officially terminated now. Offensive coordinator Mark Carney will be the interim head coach for the 2025 season, and then they will conduct a search for a permanent replacement at the conclusion of the 2025 season. It's going to be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. I mean, I don't like when there's uncertainty. I think players get concerned, rightfully so, and be interesting to see if more don't enter the portal between now and then. They've already lost quite a bit, and it feels like it'd be kind of hard to recruit, for Mark Carney to bring in a lot of guys just because of the uncertainty there. So we'll see how it goes, how that turns out for Kent State in 2025. The last two pieces of news, and then Luke has something he wants to share with you guys. But these last two, one of them came out last week, and then the other was just announced today, and they both involve Eastern Michigan and fellow or former Eastern Michigan great and current NFL great defensive end Max Crosby. So last week they announced that Eastern Michigan has renamed the weak side defensive end position as the Max. And the winner of the new annual award will be coming out to a Raiders game, and they'll be personally mentored by Max Crosby. So that's a pretty big, pretty big help for the Eastern Michigan program. And then today it was announced that Max is being named the assistant general manager for football at Eastern Michigan. He now will help Eastern Michigan evaluate high school and portal prospects, manage its NIL budget, and also serve as a special assistant to the AD on fundraising, alumni relations, and student athlete support. That's huge for Eastern Michigan and for Max Crosby. It should really help recruiting. Believe Luke had something that he wanted to mention to you guys that I'm not sure if it's been officially announced yet, but
it just broke not too long ago. I think it was fantasy or football guys or somebody was doing a podcast about WrestleMania, and NBC Sports, Eric Froton was on there with Scott Fish, and they were doing this deal, and about an hour into it, they announced the tadpole. So if anybody plays NFL college fantasy, there's now they have the live events and whatnot, but there are going to be 2 live events they're going to do a tadpole, which will be college fantasy football.
So if you aren't familiar, Scott Fish Bowl is a huge charity event in NFL fantasy football every year. Lots of participants. It's considered like an honor, I guess, to get invited to participate. And it's pretty cool that they're moving it over to the college side. So if you're interested in
showing some love there, I'll try to. I'm sure there will be a link soon. They just talked about it about 45 minutes ago. I was kind of tuned in to see that. I'm sure they'll have a link, and we'll retweet it or whatnot. Bring more eyes to football and Sun Belt, Fun Belt. I think it'll be fun to get more maybe casual fans into G5 college football. But there would be 2 live events, one in Las Vegas and one in Minneapolis. Thor Nystrom is big into the college sports, and he recently, within the last 2 years, took a job at My Fantasy Life, I think it was, with Matthew Berry. So he does all the college stuff on that side. So, and then I think there's been a pretty good track record of Scott Fish and Matthew Berry and how that made it into the NFL realm. Well, now here they are dipping their toes in the Tad Bowl, I believe is what it's called.
It's for a good cause. So, yes, Billy, Josh Cribbs was someone that has shown interest in the Kent State head coaching job. We'll see what happens, I guess. I would assume they'll be early in the process. And we'll probably hear something, I would assume, early December. And they have plenty of time to go through that process, figure out who they're looking at, and be ready to pounce once the 2025 season concludes.
All right. Well, I think that gets us into the nectar of the good stuff, our coaching changes, offensive systems, and deep dives, part 3, and our final part, let's get started with the Rice Owls. Let's see here. We've got coaching changes. Scott Abel in his first season, and offensive coordinator Vince Munch. Vince spent 7 seasons coaching the O-line and 4 of those seasons as the run game coordinator at Davidson. But for this one, we're going to take a look at Scott Abel Abel, and he started coaching in 1993 in the high school game. Then he moved to a head coach in I guess he did high school coaching from 1993 to 2007 before he got into D3 in 2008. He was the OC at Washington and Lee, which is in Lexington, Virginia. Then he moved into being the head coach there. So he did that for about 3 years, then did head coaching for about 5, and then became the head coach at Davidson starting in 2018 through 2024. As a head coach, his record is 86-52. 0-5 in the playoffs, 0-3 in the D3 playoffs, 0-2 in D1. He has 3 Old Dominion Athletic Conference championships in 2012, 15, and 17, and 2 Pioneer Football League championships in 2020 and 2021. His track record is he started with the triple option, moved to a spread option offense in 2009. It's got hyper-speed tempo. His teams have led the country in rushing in 5 out of the past 10 seasons, and they've been a top 3 in rushing in 9 of those 10 seasons. So you're in the top 10, or you're in the top 3, and you've been number 1 in 5, so that's pretty good. And that's between the D3 and FCS standpoint. And in 2024, they averaged 315.5 rushing yards per game. So note that Rice has a lack of players designated as the wide receiver, but they're labeled as slot. So if you happen to take a look at their roster here, they're not going to have a lot of wide receivers, but the slot is a hybrid of running back and wide receiver. So for data purposes, what Justice goes through here, we're going to be looking at Davidson 2021 through 2024. And previous episodes, just like those, we don't have any red zone data available for FCS data or FCS teams. But if we in this going forward, FBS, we will have that. So we'll kind of change it a little bit. Justice, do you want to give kind of the talk about the wide receivers and
yeah? So like in addition to not having red zone data for any FCS teams or coaches, when you look at when we talk about target distribution data or red zone, when we talk about red zone data, we're talking about the rooms. So like if we say the tight end red zone target distribution is 20% and non-red zones 13%. We're not talking about one particular tight end. We're talking about tight end group as a whole. When you see the graphics on the slide and it says like tight end 1 or wide receiver 1, talk about those target shares. That's talking about individual players in themselves, not the tight end group as a whole. And it's just the averages of the top wide receiver or the top tight end or the top running back or the second running back, quarterback, etc. So we'll move right in to his quarterback. As Luke's alluded to, we can expect a run and rush heavy offense for Rice here in 2025. You look at the quarterback position, kind of echoes that. You know, the quarterback and the 4-year average for his time at Davidson, the quarterback 1, the average is just under 1,000 yards with 991 yards, only 113 attempts, 11 passing touchdowns, rushing yards 374, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 12% rushing share. you would expect, given the nature of the offense, maybe the quarterback would be a bigger part of the rushing game than they are. But in his time at Davidson, the high rushing yards is 545 for only a 16% share and 3 rushing touchdowns that year. Passing wise, his high was in 2023, 1,505 yards. Did have 17 passing touchdowns. So, like Luke said, they use the slot backs, I guess, as they call them, and just based on yardage. They're not really throwing it down the field too much. But you can see some passing, as far as in the red zone with a touchdown. Said high of 17, a low of 7 in terms of passing touchdowns. Did you want to talk about the target distribution, Luke?
Yeah, so target distribution, when we're looking at the running backs, they're going to get close to 5%. Tight ends are going to get 43% of their targets. Wide receivers will be about 52%. And if you break that down for the wide receivers, the slot will get about 31%, while out wide will get 21%. So again, when they are passing it, you got your tight ends and your slots, like everything kind of close there in the middle, not really throwing it out wide.
Move over to the stars of this offense, and that's the running backs. And as you can see here, not a whole lot of difference between the top 2 running backs in this offense. RB1 averages 956 yards, 14 touchdowns. Not really utilized in the passing game. A rush share of 25%. Same 25% for that RB2. Just under 900 yards, 9 touchdowns. And then the third running back, 252 yards and 3 touchdowns for 7.2% share. So again, the offense runs through the running backs. Looks like it runs through primarily 2 running backs. In his time at Davidson, they had a 1,000-yard running back twice, both in 2023 and 2024, with a high of 1,236 yards. And that was in 2024, and 15 touchdowns. 2 out of the 4 years, the top 2 running backs all reached 10 touchdowns or more. So, in terms of usage, there's not a huge difference between the number 1 running back, and it's almost like a 1A and a 1B, I guess, if you will. It's really not a 1-2 situation. It's the offense flows through those 2 running backs.
When digging into Rice, Justice, like I know we talked about this at the end, but we're at the running backs, and I was kind of going through this, and am I crazy to be excited about Rice and kind of where they're going in the future? Have yet to really dig into what pieces they have coming back, offensive, defensive, snaps and all that stuff. We'll get there when we get to our team previews and stuff. But I'm kind of really excited about this running game. I'm kind of surprised that any running back would want to transfer out.
Yeah, from a pure running standpoint, I'm not sure that the offense will necessarily do them any favors from a preparation for the NFL standpoint. But obviously for getting the names, getting the stats, absolutely. One thing that surprised me a little bit last time I looked at their roster, I thought maybe Tajee Atkins would be listed as a slot and not a running back. But he's listed as a running back. He's a little on the smaller side. So I thought maybe they might use him more in that hybrid role. But it appears, at least when I looked, and it's probably been, I don't know, a month and a half ago, the original intention was to use him at a running back. So I'll be interested to see if he's one of those top 2 guys. He was a true freshman last year, who was really heralded coming into Rice. So I'm assuming he's super excited about this new offense. All right, wide receivers. Nothing too much to get excited about here. Wide receiver 1 averages 36 targets, 20 catches, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns for a 23% target share. The top 3 targets all line up, or top 3 wide receivers all line up on the outside, or the quote wide position, what you see on the screen. But they're just not utilized very heavily. Obviously, if the quarterback's not even throwing for 1,000 yards in a season, you're not going to see a lot of production from the receivers. Wide receiver 2, 22 targets, 15 catches, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, 14% target share. And the wide receiver 3, 14 targets, 10 catches, 130 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 9.1% target share. Receivers are not the name of the game in this new Rice Owl offense. Moving over to the tight ends, who are, in terms of the passing game, they're the ones, I guess, featured the most, right? They have the highest target distribution in the past in this offense. Tight end 1 averages 26 targets, 19 receptions, 246 yards, 4 touchdowns, a 17% target share, and he's running routes 90% of the time that it is a passing play. If you look at the history at Rice, the top wide receiver tight end season was in 2023, where he got 50 targets, 39 receptions, 394 yards, and 4 touchdowns. First 2 seasons, 21 and 22, the tight end had 6 touchdowns each. However, in 2024, the tight end had 0 touchdowns. So if they have a talent at touchdown, someone that looks like someone they like to target in the red zone, use them pretty heavily. If they have a talent there, I'm not sure if who's the Bowden Grown? I don't think he has any eligibility left, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure who the tight end 1 will be at Rice, but if they have someone that is talented, he would seem to be the one that is. If you want to say someone's featured in the passing offense, generally it's been the tight end, kind of been the featured guy. 2024, that wasn't the case. Really, no one had a big season in 2024 for the Davidson offense. So we'll see what that means for Rice in 2025. But I guess to summarize, as we said, it's a full-on rushing attack with 2 running backs featured, and that's the focal point of what we expect to be the focal point of the Rice offense in 2025.
I think the Scott Abel hire was really good for Rice. Obviously, Rice academically is a tough school to get into. Davidson, also a tough school. So, he's found a way to, be successful in those same type of circumstances. And I think also doing something different in a sense of like a service academy type, idea. I think it's unique enough to get a couple wins, and once you get to recruit the guys and get your guys in there, I'm excited for the future of Rice. So we'll see what this year holds. I don't expect great things in year 1, but I expect to see especially a big leap from like year 2 to year 3. I'm pretty excited for the future of Rice.
It'll be interesting to see if the rest of the American athletic teams kind of start becoming used to those types of offenses, right? They got Army and Navy already. Army first year last year. Now they got Rice. Be interesting to see if those defenses are able to adapt more so because they could play 3 of them in a season than maybe what we would normally expect as a defense that just that option is so unique, so different. Oftentimes that helps them when going against opponents that just they don't see it all on a routine basis. So it'll be interesting to kind of see with 3 of those teams now in the American if the defenses are able to prepare more easly and be more effective against those offenses.
Well, it's preparing and then having the personnel. I don't know off the top of my head what those we'll go through in our worker bee series, like we'll go through defensive schemes and things, but for the most part, if I were to generalize G5, they're playing a 3-3-5
Well,
defense for
I
the,
think
for the
in
most
regardless
part.
of which defense, I guess when you're playing these type of offenses, like the key is discipline. You have to be disciplined, and you have to stick to your responsibility, and that's often a problem for a lot of defenses, because it's just not normal. It's not what they, what a lot of defenses want to fly to the ball, right? Well, when
Yep.
you're playing these kind of offenses, you can't fly to the ball. You have to have a responsibility or area of responsibility, and you have to stick to that to be effective against these defenses. So we'll see
All
if the
right.
American gets a leg up having 3 of them in the conference in 2025.
Well, enough about Rice. Let's move on to Ball State Cardinals. We've got a new head coach in Mike Urimovich, and we assume he will also be the OC because I didn't see an OC listed for there. But his Urimovich's coaching history started in 1996 as a special teams and DB coach in Indiana at a high school. He then went kind of in the Midwest, then became a head coach at St. Francis in 2005 through 2011. Then was the running back and special team coach at Northern Illinois in 2012 before moving to the O-line coach at NC State in 2013 through 15. Goes back to Northern Illinois in 2016 and there in 2017 and 18. Then goes to become a co-OC and tight ends coach at Temple before accepting a head coaching job at Butler in 2022 through 2024. Head coaching record is 56-56. He's 1-1 in NAIA playoffs. He has a Mid-States Football Association championship in 2011. That's the NAIA. Urimovich's offensive track record, he approaches each season differently for the offense. At Butler, they wanted to be a high-tempo, quick plays with a balanced run and pass, more of the West Coast offense. Other years, his teams have emphasized running the ball. He mainly just wants to get the best players on the field. At Butler, he had 2 good quarterbacks and played them both as he wanted to get them both on the field. I think that's hard to kind of get as a player. It's hard to get into a rhythm that way, but then it also keeps teams off balance when they're doing that. So for data purposes, we're going to be looking at 2016 through 2018, Northern Illinois, 2019 and 2021, Temple, only 4 games in 2020, so we did not use that one. And then we'll look at 2022 through 2024 with Butler.
When we talk about target distribution data, that's only going to include Northern Illinois and Temple. It won't include Butler data, except if we're talking about in terms of all target distribution. So let's look at the quarterbacks under Mike Urimovich. Quarterback 1 averages 284 attempts, 1,888 yards, 14 passing touchdowns, 492 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 21% rushing share. If you look at his time as OC and a head coach, his top quarterback passing season was in 2019 at Temple, 2,861 yards, 21 passing touchdowns. That was also the year for the high for rushing yards for his quarterback with 833 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. Again, like Luke said, he's gonna use the strengths of the personnel he has, and the personnel he's going to have this year at quarterback 1 for Ball State and Kyle Kelly certainly would lead you to believe that he's going to rely heavily on those legs. Kelly has been a quarterback in 2023, I believe, at Ball State. And last season he was kind of used like as a weapon. He didn't really play quarterback. Yeah, he played other places on the field. And I believe even they one time they may have played him on some defense. But he's back to play quarterback for the Cardinals in 2025. And like I said, the best part of Kyle Kelly's game is his legs. So I expect Mike Yurimovich to use that heavily here at the quarterback position in 2025. Moving over to the running backs under Mike Yurimovich. The running back one averages 747 yards rushing, 6 rushing touchdowns, 15 receptions, 128 receiving yards for a 31% rush share. His RB2, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns, 10 catches for 63 yards, 17% rush share. And the RB3, 185 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 receptions, 22 yards for an 8.6% rushing share. If you look back in his time as an OC and AHC or head coach, he's had 2 1,000-yard rushers, once at Northern Illinois in 2018, and then the most recently was in 2023 at Butler. That was his highest single season for a running back with 1,267 rushing yards and 12 rushing touchdowns. And then he had almost a 50% rushing share. And to Luke's point about him utilizing personnel, his top running back has gone from a high rushing share of almost 50% to a low of 13%. So, he really tailors the offense to the personnel that he has on hand. And based on the quarterback that he's got here starting for 2025, I expect a heavy rushing attack for the Cardinals. Moving over to the wide receivers under Yurimovich. Wide receiver one averages 88 targets, 57 catches, 703 yards, 4 touchdowns, 26% target share. And all 3 of the top receivers in Yurimovich offense is typically someone that lines up on the outside or out wide. Wide receiver 2, 73 targets, 437. That should be 43 receptions, 541 yards, 5 touchdowns for a 21% target share. And the wide receiver 3, 50 targets, 30 catches, 323 yards, and 3 touchdowns for 15% target share. Twice in his career, he's had a 1,000-yard receiver when he was OC or head coach. Once in 2016, again, Kenny Galladay, NFL talent, right? You're going to utilize the personnel that you have. And then in 2019, Jaden Blue at Temple had 1,067 yards. Also in 2019, he had a 900 yards. So that was the most prolific passing season under Mike Yurimovich. And just looking at the stats for the receivers, the quarterbacks, the running backs, it just really hits home when you look at what he does in terms of offense. Twice he's had, 3 times he's had receivers get over 100 targets. 2016 with Galladay, 2019 with Jaden Blue, and then again 2019 with the wide receiver 2 at Temple. So don't expect that this year. I would expect the wide receiver and the passing numbers and receiving numbers to be on the lower end of what we see from a Yurimovich offense, just based on the personnel that they currently have at Ball State.
I feel like their wide receiver 1 is probably going to be one of the, in comparison to previous years, I just feel like they're going to live in that 65 targets area. I feel like it's going to be pretty low, maybe one of the lowest, in his tenure. Maybe not the lowest. I'm trying to think the lowest that they had was 57. They might flirt with that, but I think it would be probably similar to Butler's offense, where the leading receiver had 78 targets, probably something more like that.
Moving over to the tight end and a Mike Yurimovich offense, again, not heavily used, but the tight end 1 averages 24 targets, 17 receptions, 183 yards, 4 touchdowns, 7.1% target share, and their route percentage is only 64%. That's a pretty low. So when they're in a passing down, they're only running routes 64% of the time. The rest of the time they're blocking. So that's one of the lower route percentages. I think it might be the lowest that we've seen in teams we've covered up to this point. And we did, 14 teams so far, plus 2 already tonight. So that's 16 in the G5 anyway. His top tight end season came in 2017 at Northern Illinois, where he had 41 targets, 30 catches, 283 yards, and 7 touchdowns. If you look in terms of the tight end usage, they do see an uptick in the red zone, 19% target share in the red zone versus 11% when they're out of the red zone for that tight end room. So that's a pretty significant uptick. But again, don't expect a lot of passing out of this Ball State offense in 2025, given the personnel and Kyle Kelly at quarterback.
Target distribution in general. I kind of forgot to move myself in here, but running backs, they're going to be about 11%, tight ends 13%, wide receivers 76%. Break down those wide receivers. The slot's going to be at 37%, while out wide will be at 38%. Now, when we're talking about inside the red zone versus outside, the red zone usage of the running backs goes down considerably, about half. So when they're outside the red zone, about 10%, just like their overall target distribution. But in the red zone, they're about 4%. Tight ends, Justice just talked about that, so I'll go right over to the wide receivers. And outside the red zone, they'll be used 79%. In the red zone, 76%. Now, when they're looking at the slot's going to get 37% outside the red zone and 31% in the red zone, while out wide will get 40% outside the red zone and 42% in the red zone. So they're going to look for the out wide receivers when they do get into the end zone or into the red zone. Sorry. All right. Now let's talk about the next team here. We have the Central Michigan Chippewas. We've got Matt Drinkall coming over as a head coach. You got co-OC Jim Chapin and Derek Fulton coming in. For this exercise here, we're going to take a look at Jim Chapin. Matt Drinkall comes for the last 6 years. He's been an assistant O-line coach and co-OC for Jeff Monken at Army, so we kind of know what Army likes to do in that triple option. Jim Chapin, he has time there as an offensive coordinator at East Washington, and then Derek Fulton spent the last 6 seasons as an OC at NAIA Grandview University in Des Moines, Iowa. So, again, we will take a look at Jim Chapin here. But for this purpose, I guess for the stats, but I'm going to talk about each one of them. Matt Drinkall's coaching history starts in 2003 as a wide receiver and defensive coordinator at Bettendorf High School in Iowa. Currently, about 40 minutes from where I live. So not too far away. Went to St. Ambrose and coached there, which is D3, and then made his way to Kansas Wesleyan in 2014 before going to Army in 2019 and had been there. Jim Chapin, his coaching history started as a head coach at Dexter High School in 2007, then made his way around to different prep schools, colleges. In 2012 through 2014, he was a running backs coach at Indiana University in Pennsylvania. Then in 2015 and 2016, he went to the University of California at Davis. Then 2017 through 2021, he was at the University of Sioux Falls, where he was an assistant head coach, OC, and quarterbacks coach. And then 2022 through 2024, OC and QB coach at Eastern Washington University. And like I mentioned, Derek Fulton's time has all been he was at Grandview and then a GA at Missouri Western, and then came back and got the OC position at Grandview. He was a quarterback there at Grandview. So again, for the history for this, we will be using the 2022 through 2024 offensive coordinator data. So I want to talk about Chapin's offensive track record first. At Eastern Washington, it broke several records during his time. They scored 77 points against Idaho State, had 479 rushing yards against Idaho State, and they led the nation in converted third downs with 56.4%. They had over 200 yards rushing in 8 of 12 games in 2024. Wide receiver Efton Chisholm broke Cooper Kupp's streak of 52 consecutive games with a reception, and that was an Eastern and FCS record with 53 consecutive games. Chisholm also broke Kupp's single season Eastern reception record of 117. He had 120, so utilized a lot there. And I kind of want to give a viewpoint of all three of these because I don't think they have the personnel to run one of these systems. I think it is going to be a blend of all these. So I think I think there's some importance in just talking about those. But again, Drinkall's offensive track record when he was at Kansas Wesleyan, he was 42-17 and had the fourth highest win total in school history in 2018. At Kansas Wesleyan won its first conference championship since 2002 and shattered virtually every school record. He ran a pistol RPO with the short passes, lots of zone reads. The quarterback would sprint roll out. He'd have two running backs on the field from time to time. Then he goes over to Army, which runs its famous flexbone triple option, a run-heavy system emphasizing ball control and the short yardage gains. In 2024, we saw Army run some of that gun option, but then later in the season went back to under center and running that zone blocking scheme. Then Fulton's offensive track record, he was a part of an NAIA national championship. They won the Heart of America conference championship in all 6 seasons that he was there. In 2019, Anthony Turner set their single season receiving record with 15. 2022, Ollie Scott set the single season rushing record touchdowns with 17. In 2013, Jackson Waring set the single season passing touchdowns with 36. In 2024, they set an individual single game record of 203 rushing yards in the game. And in 2024, the team had over 3,000 yards rushing and 42 rushing touchdowns. And in their NAIA championship game, they had 353 yards on the ground and 132 yards via the air and a 35-7 win in their NAIA championship games. So again, I don't think that there's going to be any one of these, but I think it's going to be a combination or a blend. But I want to give you the idea. Oops, excuse me. I want to give you the idea behind all of them because there might be one that has an influence over the other, and you can kind of have an idea of which guy this is going into. Target distribution. When we get into the quarterback, the running back gets targeted 11%, tight ends 11%, wide receivers 74%, the slot wide receiver 41%, and out wide 33%. And again, just looking at Jim Chapin's based off, it's hard to really figure out what to do with Jeff Monken's stuff because he's mainly just been an offensive line coach under Jeff Monken for Matt Drinkall, and then trying to dig up the NAIA stats was a little bit harder with our stat provider.
Yeah, so I guess to sum it all up, Central Michigan we don't know exactly what they're going to look like. We know that they want to run the ball. They wear hats that say "run the damn ball." They are actively looking for fullbacks to add to the roster. I don't expect them to kind of run a triple option offense, but I just think it's going to be elements from all three of these coaches, right? Drinkall has that triple option experience there for Army. Jim Chapin, has a more conventional spread attack there at Eastern Washington, and then we have Grandview too. So the stats we're going to show on the slides are all from Jim Chapin at Eastern Washington. But I'll go over that, and then Luke's going to try to contrast that with what we see based on the stats we had available for Grandview. Unfortunately for Drinkall, he's never really been an OC or an HC, so it's really kind of hard to, didn't really want to just blindly pull Army stats because that's not necessarily like, he used the offensive line coach. So even though his background is offense, it's really been more along the line play. So for the purposes of this, we're really looking more at Chapin, Eastern Washington, and then Fulton there at Grandview. But again, it's just a guess on our part. The offense is probably going to be a mix of all three, and it's going to have elements from all three guys, not necessarily just one guy. Looking at the Jim Chapin quarterback at Eastern Washington, they averaged 334 pass attempts, 2,458 passing yards, 19 passing touchdowns, 306 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns with a 17% rush share. And that's been pretty consistent. His high quarterback season was in 2023 with 2,751 passing yards, and rushing was in last year a high of 411 rushing yards. I kind of expect maybe that's what we see more so from this offense is, from the quarterback, maybe a little bit less passing, a little more rushing. Last year, the quarterback Eastern Washington had just over 2,100 yards passing, but had the 411 yards rushing.
I don't know what's going on with my computer screen. Might have to skip me here.
I'll go over the Grandview stuff for quarterback. Kind of mirrors Jim Chapin a little bit. They're a little bit more aggressive in terms of passing the ball, though. At Grandview, they had one 3,000-yard passer in 2022 with 3,431 yards, but they averaged just under 3,000 passing yards. Rushing yards was similar, 346 rushing yards. But they did have last year, the quarterback at Grandview, 2,514 yards passing, 744 yards rushing, 13 rushing touchdowns. I kind of envision like what I think the melting pot of this offense is going to look like. Again, kind of mirrors that, where it's probably closer somewhere between 2,200 and 2,500 yards passing for the quarterback, and somewhere around 400 to maybe 700 yards rushing for the quarterback. Target distribution for the quarterback in a Jim Chapin offense, 41% in the slot, 33% out wide, and 11% to the tight end. Moving over to the running back in a Jim Chapin offense, running back one averages 552 yards rushing, 4 rushing touchdowns, 14 receptions, 131 yards for a 29% rush share. RB2, 465 yards, 4 touchdowns, 12 catches, 96 yards, 19% rush share. And the RB3, only 102 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, and a 4.8% rushing share. If you look at Chapin's time at Eastern Washington, his top single rushing season was in 2024 with 722 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Now, if you contrast that with Grandview, the numbers are a little bit higher. The Grandview RB1 under Derek Fulton averaged 824 rushing yards, but they're also more utilized in the passing game at Grandview under Derek Fulton. They had 27 receptions, 272 yards receiving. But they had a running back in 2023. They got 41 receptions, 530 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. So, again, it's going to be some kind of mix between Chapin and Fulton. Fulton, again, has the higher statistical numbers both for running backs and utilization of running backs in the passing game as compared to Chapin at Eastern Washington. However, neither of them have a 1,000-yard running back in their time as OC at Grandview or Eastern Washington. Move over to the receivers under Jim Chapin at Eastern Washington. The wide receiver 1 averaged 112 targets for 90 catches, 950 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns, a 31% target share, and that receiver was in the slot. Wide receiver 2, 56 targets, 35 receptions, 526 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, 15% target share. Wide receiver 3, 39 targets, 24 catches, 293 yards, 3 touchdowns for 11% target share. Both the wide receiver 2 and 3 are the outside receivers. Jim Chapin does have a 1,000-yard receiver in his history. In 2024, the receiver had 1,306 yards, 13 touchdowns, and it's been really consistent under Chapin. The slot receiver has been his top receiver all 3 years there at Eastern Washington. If you want to contrast those numbers with Derek Fulton at Central Michigan, unfortunately, I can't tell you if it was a slot guy or an out wide guy at the NAIA level. But the wide receiver 1 under Derek Fulton averaged 42 receptions, 791 yards, 8 touchdowns for not a target share, but a reception share of 19.3%. Don't have target information on the NAIA level. So, Eastern Washington was more friendly, higher in terms for the receiver, funneling it through one receiver, whereas the Grandview stats, it was more spread around amongst 3 receivers each season. So it'd be interesting to kind of see which plays out. Are we going to see the hyper targeted slot guy that we've seen at Eastern Washington under Chapin, or are we going to see a more even distribution among 2 or 3 receivers like we saw under Derek Fulton at Grandview?
And I think something else to point out that really is an interesting quirk, because it can really lean to one side or the other, but is under Fulton at Grandview, their quarterback. In 2022, they had 20 rushing attempts. In 2023, they had 79. In 2024, they had 160 for negative 88 yards, 384 yards, and 744 yards, and then touchdowns 0, 5, and 13. So if they have the quarterback to run it, they will utilize, he's got a history of utilizing a mobile quarterback. So that's what kind of makes this all very, very interesting. And then something about Chapin's offense is I think their wide receivers got hurt in the season, and they had to kind of move to a running approach midway through the season, and kind of had to switch identities, if I'm remembering reading all the things correctly. So it's I think this team is almost going to be like a chameleon. What we have here is okay, this is what we're going to do, and like you said, being a blend and not really knowing what we're getting. But I think this coaching staff is a really good staff to get together and blend a lot of these different ideas together.
It's gonna be a huge melting pot of 3 offensive systems. Going over to the tight end under Jim Chapin, tight end 1 averages 19 targets, 13 receptions, 142 yards, 1 touchdown for a 5.1% target share, running routes 80% of the time. If we compare that to Derek Fulton at Grandview, don't have target share, but the reception share for his tight end one was 7%, and the numbers are very similar. 14 receptions, 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. So don't expect heavy tight end usage in terms of being a pass catcher in the offense. I think regardless of what it's going to look like, I think that's probably the one thing I feel the safest thing about saying is I don't expect a huge year from the tight end in terms of receptions and receiving yards for the Chippewas in 2025. Again, it's kind of our best guess with Central Michigan. It's, as we said multiple times, it's kind of a melting pot of 3 different offensive minds, 3 very different offensive backgrounds, and it's probably going to have some elements of all 3. And it'll be interesting to kind of see how 2025 plays out and what this offense really looks like. Like I said, the mantra of the team is run the damn ball. And like we said, they're looking for fullbacks. So we expect a lot of running from the Chippewas in 2025.
All right, let's move over to Bowling Green Falcons. We've got a new head coach and OC. We've got Eddie George, head coach, and Travis Partridge as the OC. For this, we will look at Travis Partridge's coaching history. He started in 2017 as a grad assistant at Delta State. Coached quarterbacks at UT Martin, became an offensive quality control analyst at Kansas, and then went back to UT Martin where he was a passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And then last year he spent time with Eddie at Tennessee State, OC and quarterbacks coach. Partridge's offensive track record, he likes to use a 2-back system. He'll use multiple schemes with wide zone concepts. He will use the run to set up perimeter passing. They look to run and have those teams load up the box and then start throwing them outside, especially with like bubbles and like just quick outs to the outside. Offensive line during his time at UT Martin allowed the 12th fewest sacks in FCS, so that's part of the getting the ball out quick, and then not necessarily the run setting up the pass, but that just talks about getting the ball out quick and getting it on the outside. For data purposes, the following will be used 2022 through 2023 at UT Martin and then 2024 at Tennessee State.
All right, let's look at the quarterbacks under Travis Partridge. They averaged 385 passing attempts for 2,755 passing yards, 22 passing touchdowns, 247 yards on the ground, 3 rushing touchdowns for a rushing share of 13%. In the last 3 years, he's had a quarterback throw for over 3,000 yards once. That was in 2024, 3,038 yards. And then twice he's had his quarterback pass or more than 20 touchdowns with a high of 25. In terms of rushing yards, the high for his offense was in 2023 for the quarterback anyway, 409 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. That 3 rushing touchdowns is pretty consistent all 3 years at the 2 years at Tennessee Martin, the 1 year at Tennessee State, all 3. The quarterback got 3 rushing touchdowns. Moving over to the running backs in a Travis Partridge offense. Running back 1 averaged 975 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, 15 receptions, 107 yards for a 45% rushing share. RB2, 455 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, 14 catches, 133 yards, 21% share. RB3, 197 yards, 5 catches, 56 yards, 13% rushing share. He really relies on, with the exception maybe being in 2024, he seems to really kind of rely on one running back. He's had 2 running backs in the 3 seasons we looked at over 1,000 yards. Both years at Tennessee Martin were over 1,000 with a high of 1,373. His high last year at Tennessee State was only 509, so that really brought the average down. as well as the rush share. The rush share at Tennessee Martin for his RB1s was over 50%. Last year at Tennessee State, it was only 31% for the RB1 and then 22% for the RB2. Not sure if that was just a function of the talent or the offensive line, but it would appear like his MO is to kind of have, one workhorse running back and kind of ride them on the season. In terms of receptions, High was in 2024. His RB2 at Tennessee State had 24 catches and 306 yards on 27 targets. So they're involved in the offense, not the passing game, I should say, but they're not heavily involved. So look for one primary running back. Unfortunately, they lose Terrion Stewart. I think Terrion Stewart could have fit that role well as the Bowling Green workhorse running back, as we saw him do in years past. But unfortunately, he's off to Virginia Tech. So it'll be someone new here in 2025 for Bowling Green.
The running backs overall get targeted 12.88%, so about 13% of the time. And you mentioned the running backs when you break it down to RB1, 2, and 3. There's not really a difference between the RB1 and 2 in terms of like targets. They're both going to get 17 targets a year, and the RB1 will get 15 receptions while the RB2 will get 14. The receiving yards for that RB1 was 105, 116, and 101. So you're going to get like 107 yards receiving, and it's about 132, I think, for RB2. So usage is about the same. So just something to know.
Moving over to the wide receivers in a Travis Partridge offense, wide receiver 1 averages 96 targets, 64 catches, 904 yards, 5 touchdowns for a 26% target share. And primarily that is the slot receiver. Wide receiver 2, 75 targets, 47 receptions, 582 yards, 3 touchdowns for a 21% target share. It's an outside receiver. And then wide receiver 3, 58 targets, 33 catches, 426 yards, 5 touchdowns for a 16% target share. Once again, an outside receiver. 2 of his 3 seasons that we looked at, he had a 1,000-yard receiver, both in 2022 at Tennessee Martin and 2024 at Tennessee State. The high was 1,036. 2023 seemed to kind of be the down year for passing for Travis Partridge. But as I said, he had 2,000-yard receivers, wide receiver 1s. In both those same years, the wide receiver 2 was over 600 yards. So, really kind of leaning more along the lines of what his personnel is the strength through the air or the strength through the ground. But pretty consistent targets for that wide receiver 1. Once they've reached over 100, 102 in 2024, and then the previous 2 seasons, both 93. So you look at 90-plus targets for the wide receiver 1, and 2 out of the 3 years that has been the slot receiver. The 1 year was not the slot receiver in 2022. The slot receiver was wide receiver 2. And they also had an NFL receiver, Colton Dow, was their wide receiver 1 that year, who was in the NFL. I believe he was with the Cowboys for, I don't know if he still is or not, but he was in the NFL at the time. He was the one that broke the mold. He was an outside receiver, and he wasn't a slot guy.
And he had 93 targets, and then the slot, who's typically the number 1, had 86 targets, about the same target share. So obviously drastic in yardage, but you can see how the slot is heavily used there. And just overall, the wide receivers have a 75.8% usage, slot 39.4%, while out wide is 36.4%, which kind of You can kind of see there in
It's the slot guy, right? He's the one that's getting the majority of the targets. He's the premier receiver in a Travis Partridge offense.
Yes.
All right, moving over to the tight ends. Tight end 1 averages 32 targets, 19 receptions, 201 yards, 4 touchdowns, 8.7% target share, and they run routes 83% of the time. The top tight end season under Partridge was in 2022, in terms of yardage anyway, where he had 31 targets and 265 yards. In terms of targets, the top year was 2024 with 38 targets. This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Bowling Green, had the most prolific tight ends season a year ago in college football history with Harold Fannin Jr. They brought in Arliss Boardingham, a talented tight end from Florida. So I gotta believe that, unless Boardingham transfers, that given his talent and in the MAC, that they're gonna have to find a way to use the tight end more than what we've seen a Travis Partridge offense typically do.
And I can see them. They like to utilize the slot, and if we've got a guy that can be a tight end but kind of be in the slot, I think that's what they utilize.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, how Boardingham is used. Certainly, don't expect his usage to reach Harold Fannin Jr. numbers, but given his talent, I think it's going to exceed what we've typically seen from a tight end in a Travis Partridge offense. Again, unless Arliss Boardingham enters the transfer portal, and then maybe that's a sign that the staff said, "Hey, we're not utilizing the tight end like they were when you committed to come here," in case you want to make a different decision. Certainly possible as well.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next team, the UMass Minutemen. We've got head coach Joe Hermasak and OC Mike Bajiken coming over, and we're going to take a look more at Bajiken because Hermasek is mainly a defensive guy, being a defensive coordinator and linebacking coach. So Bajiken, I'm really struggling on this name here. Bajiken, coaching history, started in 1996, became a grad assistant at Rutgers in 1998, QB coach at Sacred Heart, grad assistant at Michigan, QB coach in 2002 at Central Michigan, then went from 2004 to 6 being on offensive quality control for the Chicago Bears, then went back to Central Michigan in 2007 through 9 as the OC and quarterback coach, 2010 through 12 OC and quarterbacks coach at Cincinnati, and then 2013 through 2014 OC and quarterbacks coach at Tennessee before going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and being the quarterbacks coach there from 2015 to 2018. Goes back to college in 2019, being the OC and quarterbacks coach at Boston College, 2020 through 2023 OC and quarterbacks coach at Northwestern. And then in 2024, he was an offensive analyst and the interim OC and quarterbacks coach at Utah. This time here, we're going to be looking at 2020 through 2023 when he's at Northwestern, as well as 2019 at Boston College. His track record, his offensive emphasis is on play action and attacking the soft areas with tight ends. He likes to target the flats via the out route. Typically, it's a run-heavy offense that leans on man gap schemes. He really likes running three running plays in particular: the sprint counter, power plays, and the pin pull sweep, which is this zone blocking principle of a sweep play. Overall, pretty conservative play calling approach. In 2019, he helped a certain running back set a school record for rushing yards in a career. Some guy named A.J. Dillon just rushed for 4,382 yards in 3 seasons. And in 2019 in particular, when he was there with him, ran for 1,685 yards and 14 touchdowns, both career highs for Dillon. So he already set the school record, but in his time there at Boston College, where he was the OC, was in 2019, and that's when he had his best year. And we all know what A.J. Dillon goes on to get drafted by the Packers, and did he get picked up by the Eagles, I think? Maybe signed with the Eagles this offseason?
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think
that's right, though.
I think it's the power of the quads. I think they're in Philadelphia. But like I said, purpose on this, 2019 Boston College, 2020 through 2023 Northwestern data. Go, Justin.
Looking at a quarterback in a Bachicayan offense, quarterback one averages 218 passing attempts, 1,375 yards passing, 9 passing touchdowns, 186 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns for a 9.9% rushing share. His offenses are not, again, as Luke alluded to, they're not known for being prolific passing the ball. The highest season was in 2023 at Northwestern with 1,806 yards passing, 13 passing touchdowns. Rushing the ball, his high for the quarterback was 318 yards. So, again, not the quarterback. It would seem to me the quarterback's really more of a game manager, kind of move the stick, so to speak, not heavily involved in terms of being the featured aspect of the offense. Moving over to what the featured aspect of this offense is, it's the running backs. Running back one, averaging 859 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 26 receptions, 307 yards receiving for a 43% rushing share. RB2, 254 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 11 catches, 93 yards for an 18% rush share. And RB3, 181 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 catches, 20 yards for an 8.6% rushing share. In his time as an OC, twice he's had a 1,000-yard running back with the high of A.J. Dillon, as Luke said, 1,699 yards in 2019. But he also had a 1,000-yard running back in 2021, and just under that, 914 in 2022 at Northwestern. So, the running backs are the featured part of this offense. And really only 1 year where the RB2 kind of stood out in addition to the RB1, and that was also at Boston College with David Bailey, 848 yards as the RB2. So obviously, they ran the ball some more there in 2019, but typically it's the one workhorse running back gets the Lions share of the work. It's always been above 40%. It hasn't been quite to 50%. 2 years they had a 49% rush share. So they find their guy. They use him a lot. He's a workhorse running back for this UMass offense in 2025.
In the target distribution, when you're looking at that running back, they're utilized about 18% of the time. Outside of the red zone, they're used about 18% of the time, and in the red zone, they're about 17% of the time. So they get utilized. Doesn't matter if you get in close or you just got the ball. They're going to try to get the running back involved, and I think that's, I'm trying to think back to all of the teams that we've looked at, but 18% is a pretty nice number. And when I'm looking at the targets and the receptions from an RB1, they're typically averaging about 31 targets and 26 receptions for 235 yards for the season. So, your RB1 there is going to get over 1,000 yards total, with some highs and lows in there too. But I think obviously this running back usage is going to be big here.
Moving over to the receivers, wide receiver one averages 78 targets, 47 catches, 600 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, 24% target share. And all of these wide receivers are primarily an outside receiver. Wide receiver 2, 58 targets, 36 catches, 444 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns for an 18% target share. And wide receiver 3, 38 targets, 22 receptions, 229 yards, a touchdown, and a 12% target share. He does not have a 1,000-yard wide receiver in his time as an OC. In fact, the highest years are just over 700. Now, in 2023, he did have 2 receivers crack the 700-yard mark, one with 708 and one with 701. And they both were the outside receivers. So, not prolific seasons for receivers under Bajakin, but it's primarily the guys on the outside. And as we said, like the running back, RB1's kind of the featured piece in his offenses.
And for when we're looking at the overall percentage, they're going to use the wide receivers 64% of the time, slot 26, out wide 36. When you're outside the red zone, they're going to utilize the slot 26% and the out wide 36%. But when we get into the red zone, the out wide will get used 32%, while the slot will be used 21%. So you do see a bit of a decrease there in the usage in the red zone for the slot. But again, it's going to be mainly a running back game when you get into the red zone, because even the usage of a 21% and a 32% is not very high.
Moving over to the tight ends, the tight end 1 averages 21 targets, 13 catches, 225 yards, 1 touchdown for an 8.4% target share, and they run routes 89% of the time. So they're blocking the other 11% of the time. The most prolific season under Bajakin for a tight end was at Boston College in 2019, where the tight end had 40 targets, 28 catches, 507 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Other than that, it's 233 yards, 68 yards, 192 yards, 123 yards. So if they have a talented tight end, he'll utilize them. But if not, then they're not really utilized a lot in this offense. And I know Dominic Mazzotti has graduated, so I'm not really sure what the tight end room looks like at UMass off the top of my head.
Well, let's move over to the next team, the Nevada Wolfpack. We've got David Gilbertson coming in. He spent as an OC. He spent the past 2 seasons as a co-passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach at Akron. So his whole history started in 2014 as a grad assistant USF quarterbacks and wide receivers coach, then moved over to the tight end group, became an offensive analyst at Oregon for several years, and then, like I said, was this co-passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach at Akron in 2022 and 2023, before moving over to Nevada last season, where he was the quarterbacks and wide receiver coach. Gilbert's offensive track record, he doesn't really have one. But let's look at Akron, because he's a passing game coordinator, he's a wide receivers coach, he's an analyst. So let's just take a look at Akron here in 2022 and 2023 in Nevada last year. And I think Jeff Choate wants to run the ball. They focused on athleticism of DJ Irons when he was at Akron, and getting the ball into guys like wide receivers Alex Adams and Daniel George. At Nevada, they focused on a run-first approach, and their goal was to run for 200-plus yards per game. The offense saw points jump up. Like I said, he was with Nevada last year. They saw their points jump up from 17.3 to 23.1, and yards increased from 300 to 376.1. So I think that they're going to want to run the ball. And then for data purposes, we will be using 2022 and 2023 Akron offensive coordinator statistics.
All right, let's look at the quarterbacks. When he was the pass game coordinator at Akron, averaged 304 attempts, 1,988 passing yards, 7 passing touchdowns, 282 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns for a 17% rushing share for the quarterbacks. The high season for quarterbacks was 2022, 2,589 passing yards. Also that year, the quarterback had 574 rushing yards. I think the percentage of rushing is really going to depend on the quarterback skills. It's had the year in 2022 where they had 574, but then in 2023 they had -10. So it's really going to depend on the particular skills for that quarterback. I believe it's going to be Chuba Purdy. Is the QB1, I believe, at Nevada heading out of the spring. Not prolific passing the ball. Either way you look at it, no 3,000-yard passers. The high passing touchdowns is 10. So, even though he's been the passing game coordinator, it has, the passing game hasn't been super effective in his time at Akron. Moving over to the running backs, the RB1 while at Akron averaged 565 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, 30 receptions, 243 receiving yards for a rush share of 40%. RB2, 221 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, 24 catches, 126 yards, 23% rushing share. And the RB3, 16 rushing yards, no touchdowns, 1 reception, 6 yards, for a 1.9% rush share. Obviously, as you can see, it's primarily two running backs utilized, and he does not have a 1,000-yard running back at his time at Akron. The high was 641 yards in 2023, but we know Nevada, last year, had some very effective running backs. Fortunately, as we talked about earlier, Savion Red is off in the transfer portal. They also lost quarterback Brendan Lewis. And then the old OC came from Kansas. And that's kind of what Kansas did was run the ball. So, I'm assuming the offense is going to look somewhat similar to last year, but I wouldn't necessarily bank on the rushing production that we saw last year.
I would agree. And when you're looking at the target distribution, the running back will get utilized about 14.5%. Outside the red zone will be about 14%, while in the red zone it jumps up to about 19%. So they will look to get the running backs involved there in the passing game.
Move over to the wide receivers. Wide receiver 1 averages 103 targets, 65 catches, 746 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns for a 24% target share. And that wide receiver has traditionally been an outside receiver. Wide receiver 2, 92 targets, 58 catches, 692 yards, 5 touchdowns, 21% target share. And that's been 50-50, whether it's a slot guy or an outside guy. And then wide receiver 3, 71 targets, 45 catches, 486 yards, 3 touchdowns, 16% target share. And again, that's been 50-50. From a wide receiver production, 2022 was by far the most productive season. He had 3 receivers, all top 780 yards or more. The wide receiver 1 had 74 catches on 110 targets for 917 yards. And then wide receiver 2 that year had 90 targets for 855 yards and 9 touchdowns. Wide receiver 3, 108 targets for 784 yards. So, as far as receiving work, that you almost saw 3 receivers with 100 targets or more, and that was in 2022. So that does offer some potential hope for the wide receivers in this offense if they can get competent quarterback play.
And then the out wide receivers outside the red zone will be utilized 38%, while inside the red zone it goes down to 31%. and the slot outside is 34%. Inside the red zone is 34%. So their usage won't change a whole bunch, but when you're outside the red zone, they're going to look for the out wide, and then their red zone usage drops below the slot usage. So you're going to look for the slot more so for the wide receivers. So while that wide receiver 1 has typically been the out wide, their touchdowns are more than likely coming from outside the red zone.
Moving over to the tight ends and a David Gilbertson offense, tight end 1 averages 26 targets, 20 catches for 163 yards and 1 touchdown for a 6% target share, and they run routes 89% of the time. The highest season for a tight end has 29 targets, 21 catches, 175 yards. So not heavy tight end utilization in this offense. And as you can see, it doesn't matter in the red zone or they're out of the red zone. The tight end room target share still 11%.
All right. Well, let's move over to our next team, and that is the Appalachian State Mountaineers. We've got a new coach, Dow Loggins, and head coach is probably going to be calling the plays here as the OC as well. So Loggins' coaching history started in 2008 and 2009 as an offensive quality control for the Tennessee Titans. He's just spent most of his time in the pros. QB coach with the Titans, OC with the Titans, quarterback coach with the Browns and the Bears, OC with the Bears in 2016 and 17, OC with Miami Dolphins in 18, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for the Jets in 2019 and 2020. Then he dipped his toes into the college where he became the tight ends coach at Arkansas in 2021 and 2022, and then OC and quarterbacks coach at South Carolina 2023 and 2024. His offensive track record is utilizing the RPOs, fast-paced, high-tempo, likes to utilize the horizontal space, so he wants to get his wide receivers and running backs to make plays, that wants to get them in space, wants the quarterback to kind of make his own in-game adjustments, being as that NFL background, wants his quarterbacks to kind of act like the NFL quarterbacks and see things. And I think that's huge in, I think, getting maybe quarterback talent to App State is, hey, I can teach you this stuff. I think I can see that being super attractive there. Expected to run a run first approach and then using the quarterback to do that. I know JJ Cole, a transfer in there, and AJ Swan are kind of not known for their rushing abilities. So maybe we're a year or two away from, what this offense can really be. But maybe we'll see a little bit more rushing than maybe we're accustomed to from a JJ Cole or AJ Swan, who happens to win this job. For data purposes, we are going to be using 2023 and 2024 South Carolina data.
So looking at quarterback, he had two really a contrast in styles in terms of quarterbacks in his 2 years of South Carolina. He had the more prototypical pocket passer his first year with some mobility, and then last year he had the super athletic dual threat quarterback. So his quarterback 1 averages 352 passing attempts for 2,852 yards, 19 touchdowns, 612 rushing yards, 6 rushing touchdowns for a 25% rush share. And again, like I said, it's really going to depend on who that QB1 is for App State in terms of what their skill set is. In 2023, you saw a 3,000-yard passer in Spencer Rattler. And then in 2024, we saw an 852-yard rusher with Lenoris Sellers. So he's going to adapt the offense, to the strengths of that quarterback, whether he's going to throw it more or rely on the athleticism and the rushing ability of the quarterback in the offense. Moving over to the running backs, his RB1 averages 797 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, 25 catches, 232 yards for 39% rush share. RB2, 209 yards, 4 touchdowns, 18 catches, 127 yards, 15% rush share. And the RB3, 93 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 catches for 55 yards, and a 5.4% rush share. He heavily relies on one running back. He does not have a 1,000-yard running back in his time at South Carolina. In the 2 years there, he had a 712-yard running back and 881 yards. But he does figure out who that is, and he seems to rely on them pretty heavily. And that's going to be real interesting here at App State because Kanye Roberts returns. They bring in Rashad Dubinion from Arkansas, and there's another kind of high-profile transfer whose name escapes me that they're bringing in. So they got 3 really talented running backs coming to App State in 2025. So it's going to be interesting to see if he kind of sticks to what he's done the last 2 years where, one guy kind of dominates the carries. In this case, it might be one guy, but it might be a different guy on a game-to-game basis. Maybe he's going to ride the hot hand in terms of, hey, this guy's give them all a couple carries and kind of see who makes the most of it and then kind of ride that guy for a game. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to kind of see how the running back room plays out at App State, given the talent they have, at least today. That could all change Wednesday when the transfer portal opens and 2 of those guys transfer out because they're not going to be the featured guy. But as of now, like I said, they got 3 talented running backs at App State, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how that usage plays out.
Is it Khalifa Keith coming over
from Tennessee? Khalifa Keith from Tennessee. Yep, that was the other guy I was thinking of.
When they're talking about target distribution, the running backs get used 17%, and outside the red zone, they're used 16%, while inside the red zone, 22%. So you do see an uptick, and I don't think it's just noise there. I think that is an uptick there using them in the red zone.
Moving over to the wide receivers, the wide receiver 1 averages 70 targets, 49 catches, 816 yards, 5 touchdowns for a 20% target share. That receiver has been out wide. Wide receiver 2, 39 targets, 28 receptions, 229 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, 11% target share. That's typically the slot receiver. And wide receiver 3, 24 targets, 16 catches, 281 receiving yards, 1 touchdown for a 6.9% target share. And that is the other outside receiver. In 2023, we saw a 1,000-yard receiver, and he's in the NFL, Xavier Legette, 1,255 yards on 97 targets and 71 catches. But then last season, the top receiver had 376 yards. So again, it's more about the talent at receiver and quarterback in terms of what he's looking to do. And I would say, to me, that the talent on this team is at running back, based on what I know today about App State. And so my assumption is you're not going to see a 1,000-yard receiver. You're probably going to see, somewhere to 500 to 700 yards for that wide receiver 1. And heavy reliance on the running backs.
And in the usage outside the red zone versus inside, the slot is used outside the red zone 28%, while the out wide is used 32%. And in the red zone, the slot goes from 28% down to 12%. So they're really not looking to get the slot wide receiver in the red zone there. And the out wide, it goes from 32% to 18%. So they're going to utilize the out wide receivers more, but those numbers plummet to where they're running the ball when they get in.
Moving over to the tight end and a Dow Logan's offense, it's pretty favorable. Tight end 1 averages 51 targets, 39 catches, 416 yards, 5 touchdowns for a 14% target share, running routes 78% of the time. The high tight end was last year in 2024 on 55 targets and 40 catches, had 519 yards and 7 touchdowns. But they do lose Eli Wilson, who was their star tight end at App State. I'm not sure who is backing him up. So it wouldn't necessarily shock me, I guess, if what we've seen from an average kind of comes down based on that tight end room at App State. I think if Eli Wilson was still there, certainly would expect the 500 receiving yards again. Not sure that we'll see that from the tight end in 2025, however.
Right. Let's move over to our next team, and that is the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. We've got coaching change, a new head coach in Charles Huff and OC Blake Anderson. We talked about this, I think, earlier, and it's very interesting because Charles Huff is more of a run first guy, while Blake Anderson is the extreme of that. But we are under the belief that it's going to be a Blake Anderson offense. I just don't think you bring in that type of personality and kind of what happened in his time at Utah State that led to him not coaching in 2024. Like, I don't think you bring all that if you're not going to utilize him and his talents. So Blake Anderson's coaching history started as a grad assistant at Eastern New Mexico in 1992. Made his way into New Mexico running back room 1999 and 2000, then a wide receiver coach at New Mexico in 2001, was a co-OC and wide receiver coach at Middle Tennessee, then was at Louisiana Lafayette, and then 2008 and 2009 he was a run game coordinator and quarterbacks coach for Southern Miss before he became the OC and quarterbacks coach at Southern Miss in 2010 and 2011. Then went to be the OC and quarterbacks coach at UNC. Then he got his head coaching gig in 2014, where he coached at Arkansas State to 2020 before becoming the Utah State head coach in 2021 through 2023. His offensive track record is a high-powered, fast-paced, balanced system. Offenses are known for their ability to put up a lot of points. During his time at North Carolina, his offense averaged 44.2 points per game, and on 7 occasions posted more than 500 yards over the 2 seasons. Wide receiver 1, we will get into it, but it's very interesting. Over an average of 8 seasons, saw 111 targets. So that's an average. Definitely like to pass the ball. When we talk about this data for those purposes, we'll be using 2016 through 2020 while he was at Arkansas State, and 2021 through 2023 when he was at Utah State.
Looking at a Blake Anderson quarterback, the quarterback 1 averages 329 passing attempts for 2,757 passing yards, 24 passing touchdowns, 319 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns for a 15% rushing share. During his tenure, he has seen a 3,000-yard passer 3 times, with the high being 3,958 yards and 37 touchdowns in 2017 while he was at Arkansas State. That was also the high in rushing yards for his quarterbacks with 613 rushing yards. As Luke alluded to, he likes to air it out in his offenses. If you move over to the running backs, his running back 1 averages 940 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns, 16 receptions, 124 yards receiving for a 37% rush share. RB2, 524 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, 12 receptions, 87 yards for a 23% rush share. And then RB3, 195 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 3 receptions, 17 yards, and a 9.7% rush share. He's only seen a 1,000-yard running back once, and that was in 2022 at Utah State, where he had 1,122 rushing yards. That was also the high for rush share, where that running back got almost 49% of the rushing share. So, while he does, like to throw the ball, You will see productive runners, typically whoever that RB1 is in a Blake Anderson offense.
Now, when it comes to the target distribution for the running backs, they will be utilized about 17% of the time outside of the red zone, 16% of the time in the red zone, 22% of the time. So they will get an uptick there in passing usage in the red zone.
Moving over to the wide receivers in the Blake Anderson offense, the wide receiver 1 averages 112 targets, 76 receptions for 1,087 yards, 9 touchdowns, target share of 26%, and most often that is an outside receiver. It has been a slot guy in 3 of the 3 of the 8 years. It was a slot guy, but 5 of the years it was an outside receiver. The wide receiver 2, 81 targets, 53 receptions, 713 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns for a 19% target share. That is most often a receiver out of the slot. Wide receiver 3, 66 targets, 38 receptions, 572 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, 15% target share. And that is exclusively an outside receiver. In his tenure, they've had 1,000-yard seasons 4 times. He's never had 2,000-yard guys in the same season. The closest would have been 2023 when Jalen Royals had 1,084 and Terrell Vaughn had 936. Vaughn was in the slot and Royals was out wide. His most prolific season came from a slot receiver. And that was in 2021 with Devin Tompkins. He had 1,722 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns on 161 targets. He's had 7 times. He's had a receiver go over the 100 target mark, with the high being again Devin Tompkins in 2021 with 161 targets. So, there can be 2 productive receivers in the offense, and given the talent at Southern Miss, it wouldn't shock me that we see that again here. The question is, who is it going to be? Because there's been they brought in some some transfers from Marshall, and they brought in some transfers for Utah State. So is it going to be the Blake Anderson guys or the Charles Huff guys, the ones kind of getting the targets? The one thing I do feel safe about is I believe of all the receivers they brought in, really only one of them plays in the slot. That's Elijah Metcalf, who came over from Marshall.
And when you're looking at the target distribution of this, the slot is utilized outside the red zone 28%, while out wide is utilized 32%. And inside the red zone, the outside is 18%, while the slot is 12%. So what really sticks out to me there is, yes, the out wide gets more of the looks in the red zone, but those numbers are pretty low. But then that kind of makes sense when you're running this high-powered, fast-paced system that you're looking for those big plays. And so a lot of your touchdowns are going to come on those big explosive plays when you're trying to score quick and you're not in the red zone. But they will look more so to run the ball when they get inside the 20.
One other thing I guess kind of point out with Southern Miss is obviously a lot of Marshall players followed Charles Huff, and the starting quarterback, Braylon Braxton, came over from Marshall. And so, if you would think if there's going to be a mix of Utah State and Marshall guys at receiver, Braxton's probably going to favor the Marshall guys just from the standpoint he has more chemistry with those guys. So that bodes well for Elijah Metcalf. And then also I've seen pretty glowing reports this spring from Braylon Brown, who's an outside receiver that came over from Marshall as well. obviously Braylon Braxton's going to have a some history with those guys, and I would assume maybe he would favor them more, at least at this point, as compared to a receiver that came over from Utah State, followed Blake Anderson. Moving on to the tight ends and a Blake Anderson offense. The tight end one averages 32 targets, 21 catches, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns for 7.4% target share, and a route rate of 79%. The most prolific seasons for a tight end under Blake Anderson happened very early in his tenure at Arkansas State. In 2016 and 2017, he had the tight end top over 600 yards both of those years, with 652 being the high and 7 touchdowns being the high. Since then, it's been pretty consistently 200 yards or less for a Blake Anderson tight end. So don't really expect the tight end usage to be very high in terms of the passing game for the Golden Eagles in 2025. Red zone, you can see they are targeted a little bit more in the red zone than out of the red zone. 12% target share versus an 8.5% target share when they're not in the red zone. And I believe that's it. That was the last team. We've done 22 teams in total. If you haven't caught it all, there's a part 1 and a part 2 of this 3-part series. So if you're looking for some other offenses, go check those out. Like I said, we ended up doing a total of 22 teams.
But Central Michigan almost counts as like 3 teams in themselves. That was a lot there for Central Michigan. So I mean, it's like even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're tuning in live, this is going to be the last live show, most likely until August. So for those of you maybe not familiar with what we do a series called the Worker Bee series. We did it last year for the first time, where we interview the beat reporters for every single G5 team. We did all 64 of them a year ago. We have started that process, and next week we will be releasing the first interview in that series, and then it'll just keep rolling from there. So, if you're interested in deep diving in the teams, learning about offense, defense, special teams, we talk about every single position group. Make sure to tune into those. Those aren't live interviews; they are pre-recorded. They will be up on our YouTube channel. So if you're not following us on YouTube, please head over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button so you won't miss those previews. We do announce them on X when they are available, typically 8 a.m. on the morning of release. So 8 a.m. next Monday will be the first one. Some weeks we'll have multiple releases, and then they're also available on our podcast feed. You won't be able to watch them on X, so you'll need to head over to our YouTube page again, hit that subscribe button, and you're something you don't want to miss. Like I said, it's basically a deep dive into each position on every team in terms of personnel and what we know or what we saw in the spring, and what we can expect for those teams in the 2025 season.
And while we would love to have you watch the video that encompasses it all, Justice was nice enough last year. We'll see if he's nice enough this year, but he broke them up into offense and defense. So if you're just interested in the defense, you can do that. If you're just interested in the offense, you can do that. But our podcast will be the totality of the whole positions. All the positions.
Yeah, they usually come out much later than the original release. The original release is the full video. They typically last, 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes they go over an hour. We will chapter them on YouTube. So if that you'll be able to go with offense and the defense, if that's what you're looking for. But yeah, encourage you to once again head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button.
All right. Also, leave 5-star ratings. Give us some reviews. Thank you all for your support. Until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.